Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being with us here today on this lovely weather. My name is Jared. I've been with SE Labs for about 2.5 years now. I'm a security analyst here for the endpoint security team.
I'm Billy, and I've also been here for a year now, endpoint security team. I've been security analyst. Thank you for being here today.
So we're here to talk to you today about why we think, or why we know, endpoint testing is still relevant today. So just a few examples to start with before we get into the meat of our presentation. These were real attacks that happened this year, mostly ransomware attacks on endpoints. So for the first one, Foxconn, this was done with a threat group called Hydrogen. They forced the BYOVD, Bring Your Own Vulnerable Driver attack, on a lot of North American assembly facilities, and then they executed their ransomware on the target from there. University of Mississippi, threat actors deployed ransomware payloads inside the medical center core server infrastructure, and this caused the servers to be heavily encrypted, and this lasted for like about 9 days, just over a week. That shut down all their servers. They couldn't access anything. So yeah, they're in a lot of deep trouble there. And then last one, Jaguar. They also had a ransomware attack as well. The attackers deployed sophisticated ransomware payloads coupled with a few administrative credential harvesting tools as well. So just a little insight onto what's been happening in the real world still. So a bit about what we've covered today. Endpoint security testing, what it is, why people say it's obsolete and why we think they're wrong, how SE Labs tests and what our results tell us, and the future of endpoint security testing. So defining the endpoint, it's quite simple. I'm sure everyone knows what it is, but it's simply just our everyday devices, laptops, desktops, workstations, mobile devices, anything that's connected to your network essentially. So they represent the final frontier for our security control. That's because threats often bypass the perimeter defenses through phishing emails and external media. So protecting the endpoint means securing the exact location where data is processed, stored, and targeted. Attackers target them because they usually house human users who are often the weakest link within our companies.
So before we go any further, here's endpoint security in a broad day-to-day basis. So we obtain malicious links and URLs which are fetched from a threat researcher. We take those from the wild. We take logs of the information on the system beforehand. So this includes registries and other juicy information, etc. And we execute monitoring tools. So these capture network traffic and process information which is running on the system. We start the test and we check on how the product handles the malware. We take logs post-exposure to see if anything malicious or out of the ordinary seeps through onto the endpoint system, and results are noted accordingly on blocks, remediations, neutralizations. So that's if the product downloaded or allowed the round to run in any way, or if it's completely compromised, which is the worst of the worst. So this test is not just for malicious URLs, but it's also applicable to our targeted attacks in which we create the malicious round, so the malware that we use. We create samples and false positives as well, which test accuracy rates of the product. The test is kept repeatable so that every single antivirus can undergo the test in the exact same way, so this keeps our testing unbiased and fair. So here's an example of a ransomware that we saw the other day.
I think it was a couple of weeks ago, during our testing, and I think Billy actually was the one that tested it in the time, and it like completely shut down the computer. Couldn't access anything, obviously, but like just seeing it happen, quite eye-opening.
Yeah, so it's not just living off the land and new modern threats that we see nowadays, inconspicuous malware. It's important to test the range of these possible threats in today's landscapes because they still exist. So here are arguments for why people are saying that antivirus might be dead and for endpoint testing to be irrelevant. So signature-based antivirus, it still remains relevant for the general user, but it must shift away from static file scanning and more towards behavioral monitoring and rapid remediation. Antivirus may not be sufficient on its own. So modern day threats like living off the land and the 0 days problem, novel threats have no signature yet, and if an attacker is using something genuinely new, a product that relies on pattern matching simply won't recognize this new threat. The volume of 0 day exploits has surged by 42% year over year prior to public disclosure, and this is no doubt driven by the weaponization of new tools like AI. This means that the AV products must be adaptable and take on new means of protection that cover every basis possible. However, it ultimately serves as the final barrier before an initial compromise. If you're testing products against known malware, what are you really learning? And this is also a valid argument, but it's also necessary to cover, since it's fine for a product to block the most difficult of malware to find, but if it's getting the basics wrong, then there's a big problem. New products may not get this right at the start, and testing known malware until they get it right is important in raising general standards and treating every product fairly. So why this AV is dead argument, why it's wrong. The reality is that most victims and small businesses, general users, are not just hit by 0 days, they're hit by ransomware families and info stealers that have been circulating for months or years. That is what we still see today, as per a previous slide. Some endpoint products look at poor setup and actively suggest ways of improving them, which also takes me back to endpoint products being evolved. The simplest rebuttal as well. If antivirus was truly dead and irrelevant, attackers would have moved on entirely with endpoint systems. Malware delivery rates are increasing and not decreasing, and with the rise of new tools and AI generative means, just because it's boring doesn't mean it's not important and it shouldn't be overlooked. And if we can get these 0 days tested before they're on the actual systems, then there is genuine value from what our endpoint testing can do.
So, similar to what Billy was saying, attackers recycle a lot of their code online. So, for about 44% of global breaches involve commodity malware and ransomware rather than the 0 days. So, similar to what he was saying, 0 days are not the majority, but it's still important. This is usually on small businesses as well, because they're easy targets and usually have less resources to defend against sophisticated and non-sophisticated attacks, resulting in about 88% of attacks on small businesses succeeding. Testing catches misconfigurations and helps harden and train our defenses through heuristic machine learning engines to observe, comprehend, and map real-world adversary tactics. A vendor mentioned last year, around the same workshop time, that because of SC Labs testing, early testing, they struggled with a sample that we tested, and I won't say who it is, but it eventually neutralized it. But because they involved in our testing, when they saw a similar attack happen on their infrastructure a couple months later on, they realized it was similar, and they were able to work through it and stop it from going further into their system. So we don't just test just for testing's sake. We try to give the vendors a head start in staying prepared and protected through day to day. So with redefining independent testing, vendors self-report creates deep bias and conflicts of interest. So this can stall actual product improvement. This can lead to a lot of flaws in products because of the lack of attention of detail and needing to improve. That's why at SE Labs, we test like hackers, as I'm sure you heard Simon say earlier. So we help the industry grow. Oops. Sorry.
Jared, you have to tell people something 7 times before they're
Yeah, actually, yes. I have to tell them 7 times. Yes, thank you. So we test like hackers, and to help to keep the industry's growth forever rising. And as we all know, tech in general is moving at a very fast pace with new ways to attack as well and defend utilizing AI. So that's why modern testing has evolved, especially here at SC Labs, through our Pivot program, making sure we cover all attack surfaces and leaving nothing untouched so vendors are aware of what they need to improve on. As independent testers also, we must stay ahead of the curve as well, replicating authentic cyber threats, and that can happen daily to drive product accountability and stable detection throughout day-to-day operations, ensuring our defense withstands real adversary rather than just theoretical compliance.
So the most powerful mechanism for making the entire endpoint security industry better is publishing publicly these results. So when a product's results are published publicly, the vendor can't just ignore them, and they're held accountable for their work and how they've performed. I've been working at SC Labs for over a year now, and for the time that I've been here, I have seen genuine improvements in a lot of the products that used to struggle when exposed to emerging threats over the last year. At times, the public publishing can seem daunting, but in my opinion, and also the opinion of the company, I'm sure,
This is the best way to kick your ass into gear. As likely as
official
said
company
as
policy.
that. Official company
Yeah, Simon
policy.
says. Yeah.
So if a product has performed poorly in an area, we don't just tell them how they've done badly, we also tell them, we don't just tell them that they've done badly, we tell them how they've done badly. So this way, they have actionable information which will actively improve their product. Although we're all here to achieve the same thing, the competition within the market should be looked as a friendly one.
Yeah. So what our results reveal as well a bit. Throughout our day-to-day work, we must be honest and say not every AV out there is doing as good as the rest, unfortunately. There is, in my opinion, a fairly big gap between the top and bottom contenders as well. This could be budgeting issues, manpower, or the difference in business focus, really. But what we do know is that majority of the AVs between small businesses, consumers, and enterprise have roughly a 40% to 6% gap when hit with the same evasion tactic tests. And this includes our false positive tests as well. We have seen many articles and blogs talking about who is the best out there. I'm sure you've seen a lot of them. And to be honest, when we test them here at SC Labs, they do fall short of the hype. So this can lead to a lot of wasted purchases and possible breaches because of he said, she said. Facts from a real source is what matters. That's why we do what we do.
Absolutely. So no field stands still, and endpoint security and security in general is no exception here. So as the threat landscape evolves, so does our testing. And there are some genuinely quite difficult problems on the horizon. I think the most significant one of all of these is the use of AI. So we are already seeing early signs of attackers using AI to produce polymorphic threats, which is constantly changing their identifiable features to evade traditional signature-based security software. The ease of access of AI tools has also drastically increased the volume of malware and cyber attacks circulating globally. There has been a 4,151% increase in AI-generated phishing attacks, and this has been since 2023.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure everyone and their families as well have been getting like random weird emails and phishing emails that just pop up out of nowhere. And like for my family members, especially my mum being like an older generation, she didn't grow up with computers. So the struggle is like getting them to like understand what is like malicious and what is not malicious. So I've actually told her, anytime you see something and you're not too sure, just call me and ask me, or just message me and ask me and send a picture of it. And then I'll say yes or no, and then you can go from there. But it's a real thing, and a lot of people can fall for those things very easily. So, and it's not just the older generation, it's the younger generation as well.
So they should all text you to ask.
Yeah, if you can. I'll give you my number after this.
Yeah. So in my opinion as well, cloud-delivered protection also raises difficulties. So this is more of an observation. A lot of modern endpoint products rely heavily on cloud lookups to make their decisions. But from my experience over the last year, some products in testing also work slightly differently to another when applying this cloud-based protection. So some of these products might not work with our proxies, which keeps the malicious round that we are testing consistent for all machines. And some take time to boot up and initialize after a system restart, which leaves some products vulnerable. As testers and endpoint security developers, how can we make this cloud protection as efficient as possible while also ironing out any outlying inconsistencies within our testing? The addition of AI in products is also an important a challenge, because AI works off the information that users and developers feed it. Sure, it can be manipulated and given instructions, but what if this AI is wrong? AI is still a work in progress, and the positives and risks of its usage in endpoint protection needs to be weighed out. It's possible that its addition can do more harm than good. So these aren't reasons to drop endpoint, definitely not. But they're reasons to invest and drive forward, making testing smarter and products better. That's what we're all here for. The need is there, and new technologies, new features must definitely be added for the general consumer, and some technologies we're already seeing.
So, a few key takeaways. We believe endpoint will always be dominant and relevant to every business and general consumer, unless we get rid of them in the next couple of years, which probably won't happen. We must continue to ensure our safety and using them. Active discussions, roundtables, and workshops like this must be used to learn from each other to better enhance our infrastructure. With what we learn, we must also make sure non-cybersecurity professionals understand the threats out there and how they can play a part in helping themselves and businesses stay safe. Thank you very much. We are open for any questions you may have.
Well done, guys.
Thank you.